Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
As the voice said, it is Peter Robbins with Meanwhile Here on Earth, and welcome to it. You are listening at KGB Digital, KGRA, don't mind me, KGRA Digital Broadcasting, and you can subscribe if you want to all of our wonderful shows. If you use my name, Peter, P-E-T-E-R, you will receive a 30% discount. Otherwise, you can hear the show at KGRA Digital Broadcasting or on Spreaker.com. As we all know, last week, the Russian army invaded the independent country of the Ukraine. I think it's been an awfully long time since Americans were this galvanized by such a hideously illegal and monstrous action by a world leader against an independent country. It's also been kind of fascinating to me in a poignant way that people who disagree with each other politically here, whether they see things in terms of progressive thinking or conservatism, are all primarily backing the outrage of how we all feel collectively about this incursion. All I can add is we all wish the people of the Ukraine minimum casualties and one way or another, a way of moving through this tragedy with the least amount of damage. And I was about to say to get the Soviet Union out of the Ukraine. Well, I think that's what the leader of Russia would like to return the world to. But on to more exciting, in a positive way, subjects. We have a fascinating show tonight, and it is featuring a very dear friend and a close colleague who had the courage and the sense of humor to allow me to have her on as my very first guest last year, a year ago, January, something I will always be in her debt for. Kathleen Marden is an author, on-camera expert, consultant, international conference presenter, experiencer advocate, intergenerational experiencer, and practitioner of hypnotic regression. Since 1990, she has researched the perplexing nature of UFOs and the non-human entities associated with highly advanced aerial vehicles via her own groundbreaking research, investigation, and experimentation. She is the 2021 recipient of the International UFO Congress Lifetime Achievement Award. For 30 years, Kathleen has engaged in scientifically focused research on ET experiencers, the history of government involvement in major UFO studies, and the U.S. government's fusion of the facts. During this time, she was closely associated with Mutual UFO Network as its director of the Experiencer Research Team and the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Encounters as a research consultant and advisory board member. This has combined to give her a depth of knowledge that few possess on this subject. Her interest in UFOs and contrast began in 1961 when her aunt and uncle, Betty and Barney Hill, had a close encounter and subsequent abduction in New Hampshire's White Mountains. She has conducted an extensive multi-year investigation of their experiences. Her newest book is Forbidden Archaeology, a personal journey from alien abduction to spiritual transformation. And we'll be discussing that book on this show tonight. Kathleen's books are available in all formats at fine online bookstores everywhere. Autographed copies can be purchased in the United States by visiting her website, which is KathleenMarden.com. And it is a pleasure to welcome you, Kathleen Marden, back to Meanwhile Here on Earth.
Thank you, Peter. It's great to be back with you.
It seems too long ago that a month ago I was standing with you and your wonderful husband, Charlie, behind your house, looking out on the lake, thinking, this is lovely. Why do I live in central New York State where when I go home tomorrow it's going to be 0 degrees?
That's a good question, Peter.
Yeah, it's one I won't be asking myself in a few months, thinking, poor Kathy and Charlie, it's 130 degrees there. They must be dying. I feel so bad for them. It's, as
as long as we have air conditioning, Peter.
Yes, exactly. Right. Also true. Kathy, your new book really is a game changer for me. There have been so many books at this point that really run the gamut on the abduction and experiencer phenomena, and a great deal more books than either one of us are aware of on spiritual aspect of contact with other intelligences, so to say. But it's rare in my experience that one volume covering an individual's life and progression in the way that they think, experience, see the world, change their mind, adjust their thinking, evaluate new research, takes us from one story arc well into the next one. And I'm delighted that we have several wonderful guests join us for later in the show who've been directly involved with you on this new book and in this period of time for you. But let's take a few minutes first for those that missed you last January 3rd, a year ago, or do not remember the whole show, which may be everybody who saw it. And again, get an idea of how a very young Kathleen Marden became the Kathleen Marden we have come to know. And the first photo is wonderful. Are you the larger person or the smaller person in the picture?
What do you think, Peter? Is the doll holding me or am I holding the doll?
It's a wonderful picture. It's funny sometimes in the way our minds work. Do I remember that photograph being taken of me or that period of time or that pair of shoes, or am I just imagining it looking at the photograph? What's your first thought when you look at this picture?
It was my first birthday and I do not remember. My first thought was, look at me clutching that doll. In all of the pictures that I have seen of myself when I was younger, I was always clutching a doll, or even when I was climbing trees, had one strapped to my body.
Wow.
I always wanted to be a mother.
I guess, or just to have that emergency person by your side in case you needed somebody to talk to if things got too lonely. A doll strapped to your body. That's very kind of paramilitary in a way, but I like it. This is another photo I love.
Yes, this is my Aunt Betty and me, and I'm not sure who the other person is. I don't believe it's my mother, but it could be Betty's oldest daughter, adopted. Yeah.
And do we remember the name of the dog?
No, I'm afraid not.
Fair enough. And another giggly, wonderful picture.
Yes, me and my two brothers. So my mother, I put us into the bed that way so that we could pose for that wonderful photograph. And you can see my brother Glenn on the right side, who was so shy and just was so tickled. He put his hand over his face, and little Tommy in the middle.
That also bespeaks another time when we were kids growing up. Often it would be, well, your parent that would be taking a picture, but it would be, if not an occasion, is something, you were going to take a photograph now, as opposed to the golden age of selfies and snapshots and people taking pictures of each other and themselves and their children, at such a rate and such a volume that it's not really a special thing. It's just, there's that camera in my face. And your brother's reaction bespeaks, again, for me, a more innocent time, like a mob chief. He doesn't want to be photographed. Probably not the way. Oh, boy. Gorgeous then and gorgeous now, my friend.
Peter, thank you.
It's a beautiful smile. And how old are you in this picture, Kath?
I think I'm about 3 in that picture.
These photos radiate a real warmth and a happy family. Is that a fair characterization?
Oh, yes. I grew up under the best of conditions, surrounded by family, had my grandparents across the street and aunt and uncle next to them. So it was wonderful. And we had a close family. We always gathered together every weekend, even those who worked during the week and lived a short distance away.
You made that really come alive for me 7 years ago on a very special Sunday afternoon. You and I and our friend and colleague, Denise Stoner, had been speakers at the Exeter, New Hampshire UFO Festival and Conference. And afterwards, you took Denise and I on a drive where we basically visited all these places. And, your life became that much more real to me, and the real locations, and thinking about what was going on behind the scenes with some of the family members. Very poignant, very poignant. And another wonderful photo with your mom.
My mother and my little brother, Glenn, and myself. Glenn was a police detective during his career, and he now works for the court system.
Wow. And the Marden family, does the family go back in New England or transplanted from another part of the country earlier on?
Yes, my husband's side of the family goes back to fishermen from England who were in the Portsmouth, New Hampshire area trading. And my husband's ancestors got off the ship and at an island, and then crossed over into Portsmouth and ran a successful lumber company on the shores of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and lived in Rye. You can still go to Rye, New Hampshire, and see the original Marden family home.
Wow. I love it.
Oh, there are my grandfather, Raymond Barrett, and my grandmother, Florence Barrett. She was originally a Rollins. And that's me at about probably 7 years old.
Wow.
Here I am at, I think, 13. My grandparents had taken my 2 brothers and myself to Canopy Lake Park. And we enjoyed playing in the arcades. And I kept playing and playing, trying to win. And I finally won that teddy bear. So I valued it greatly.
A great feeling.
Yes.
And, well, I hope your dolls weren't upset that somebody took their place, at least for the moment. And a photo very poignant, and one almost internationally recognizable as two of the best known, most iconic people in the entire history of UFO related studies. Your aunt and uncle, Betty and Barney Hill.
Yes.
It's for this. Let me make a guess here. Was this photo taken before their famous 1961 UFO experience?
Yes. I think that was probably taken when they were married. I can't say for certain. It probably about a year before they took their fateful journey. And Betty and Barney were close family members, excellent role models for me. We did a great deal together.
Yeah. My mind goes all over the place when I see this picture. First, I see, a great looking couple, very much in love. It just, they both look so happy. And to think at this moment in history, this was a big deal for a white woman to marry a black man in the United States of America, even in generally progressive New England. Mm-hmm. Do you remember any thoughts as a young person or reflections on that, and messages, overt or covert, subliminal or actual, about your uncle marrying your aunt?
I only know that my Aunt Betty had friends of all races. She was a person who didn't discriminate on the basis of race or religion. Yeah. She was very open-minded and intelligent and educated. And so it's just seemed natural. I had a black doll when I was growing up. She had a friend, Sarah, that she would bring to the house.
Beautiful.
So I grew up that way, and I'm very happy that I did.
Yeah. So am I. I remember one of the most poignant aspects of becoming a student of the study of UFOs decades ago. And when I began to study, it's such a dispassionate term when we're talking about human lives, but the Hill case. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that struck me as a young person growing up in a very progressive family in the greater New York area was, in the North, most of the newspapers that I was finally starting to read accounts of covered this event in any number of manners, but what they didn't cover was what I would occasionally see in coverage in Southern publications of white woman and black man have alleged UFO experience, as opposed to couple alleges. And, well, a sign of the times, although for some people still the case. This photo, when you had told me what it was, I remember being quite taken aback, but remembering that both your uncle and aunt were very involved in civil rights activities in the 60s, then it made sense. Can you tell us about this picture?
This was the New Hampshire delegation at Lyndon Johnson's inauguration. And Betty and Barney were active in the campaign. In fact, Barney had set up a literacy program through the Archdiocese of Manchester, New Hampshire, so that people would be able to pass a literacy test and could vote. And he was very actively involved in New Hampshire politics. He, a little bit later, the same year, was appointed to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights State Advisory Committee. And he was also given an award by Sergeant Shriver that year from the Office of Economic Opportunity. So he was very, very active, as was Betty, in being active to do good things for the people of New Hampshire. And I don't know if you can see me in that picture, Peter, but there I am in the back row.
Yes.
I was active with them as a teenager. I said they were good role models. And I also received an invitation.
Wow. And there's your aunt and uncle in the lower right.
Yes.
Wow. What a special night.
It was fantastic. I'll never forget it.
A snapshot. But what have we captured here?
Well, my high school graduation was covered by Look magazine.
Why?
This is Paul Fusco, and John Fuller had written 2 articles for Look magazine, and Paul Fusco was the photographer for Look magazine. And they wanted to show that Betty and Barney just came from a normal family.
I love it.
And so he came to my graduation and the party after and photographed the family. Yes.
Good for Look.
That's not a very good picture, but we see Betty and Barney, and there's me when I was about 19 years old, and my grandfather, Raymond Barry.
I love this one.
Yes, that's when I got married to Charlie, with Betty here in the middle.
And I put this picture next because this was your first book with your first collaborator.
Yes.
A dear friend and close colleague who we miss every day, the late, great Stanton T. Friedman.
Yes.
And who better for both of you to partner up with to write a book about Betty and Barney's experience?
We thought that we had a good partnership because he was a physical scientist, a nuclear physicist, and I was a social scientist. Trained in those traditions. So what better combination could you have?
Not much. And a bit of self-advertising here.
Oh, yes. Us with our dear friend Jennifer Stein.
Absolutely. And I'm going to hold on. No, in fact, let's take a look at your other books right now. We can always come back to them. Captured, of course.
Yeah, the 60th anniversary edition.
Yeah. Extraterrestrial Contact, What to Do When You've Been Abducted.
Mm-hmm.
Another title with Stan, of course. And I recommend these books not just to people who are serious about the subject, who are readers, who are building their libraries, who are knowledgeable. These are wonderful introductory books as well. You and Stan never wrote down. You do not write down to people. You write straight out to people, so to say. There's never even a hint of condescension. If you're not experienced in the work or knowledgeable with a background of case histories, it doesn't matter.
Right. And our objective was always to include factual information with footnotes and bibliography, but to write the book in such a way that it told a really interesting and compelling story.
Yeah. Well, that's really what it comes down to. And this also, the title says it all. They're great books to read in tandem or to come back to as well. The fact that you are now back on your own, so to say, and the other co-author that you've had, and I hope she will be joining us during the second half of the show, is the great Denise Stoner, who also lives not that terribly far from you and has been a research partner on and off for years, and one of the dearest people that we know. And what a background. My gosh, you really do work with people who are remarkably well credentialed.
Yes, absolutely.
Fascinating
people.
Yeah. I would also say for people who are open-minded, willing to try on an idea that may not be fully comfortable for them, it is a real challenge if you have never had the experience or studied it for years, along with all the physical evidences associated, or have friends or close colleagues who have had these kinds of experiences, to, well, for many people, simply allow yourself to say, sure, other intelligences come here, they take people, they put them through all these procedures that I've read about, but it just can't be. It's got to be some psychological aberration or something else, because this is just too much for me to take in. If that is you, this is a good book to reflect and learn from. If this is a subject that you are intimately familiar with, this book is also for you, as an extraordinarily well-written catalog of events and realities experienced by people that go through these events. All of this leading, Kathy, to Forbidden Knowledge, a personal journey from alien abduction to spiritual transformation. I want to compliment whoever did the cover. I think it's a real powerhouse. It's simple, it's elegant, and it doesn't look like a UFO book in quotes. It looks like a real book, you know?
Thank you, Peter. I did the cover.
Hey, way to go, girl. And again, this is where we're going to be discussing all of our attention is going to be on the second half of the show. But right now, let's go back a bit in your life, because while as you were coming up through the work and when we first met, when you made your friends in the field, you had a cachet, you had a pedigree in a way in the world of UFO studies that, for people like me, imparted immediate respect. You were the niece of Betty and Barney Hill, and we all knew or felt we knew something about them. And the more we learned, the more respect we had for them, and that you were the living connection, and incredibly close to your aunt, and even more so toward the end of her life.
Yes.
But you were keeping a secret from all but a few people through that whole period of time, and in a sense, living a double life. You were Kathleen Marden, the increasingly well-known UFO investigator, researcher, abduction specialist, and Kathleen Marden, the person that was going through much of the same things that you were chronicling. Can you tell us a bit about what it was like first when you were young and you knew this was happening to you? 13, I guess, or 12 was the dividing line. That was before and after your aunt and uncle's experience. Before their experience, were you consciously having abduction experiences that you recall?
I didn't know what it was. I would wake up during the night. It wasn't sleep paralysis because I was able to move and scream. There would be a kind of a black shadowy figure over me, and I would scream. My mother would come running to comfort me, and so I thought, oh, it must be those fairy tales, those tales of witches or whatever. And then when I was an adult, my mother told me that she saw them too in my room, that something was there.
At that moment, when your mother first told you that she saw them too, that you were not alone, this was not your imagination, any memories associated with that moment? I'm trying to think how I would deal with it if it was me and my mom or me and my dad in a similar situation.
Well, it was a bit shocking, to say the least, Peter, to know that it wasn't my imagination, it wasn't a dream, that, this was really happening. And I think of the bloody noses in the family too, that so often is associated with being taken.
I remember that being part of my sister's history. especially around that time when she was taken, that we're most aware of. Was that moment accompanied by your mother saying to you or implying, or was it just logical to you as a young person who was sensitive to the world around you that this is something not to talk about with everybody that I know? This is something not to share. This is not something that happens to everybody that I know. This is something I need to be discreet about and keep separate in my life.
Absolutely. And I kept it separate in my life for 60 years, for a very long time. And then I decided, after many people had come up to me and said, you really should tell your story, then I started to think about that. But my aunt went through such pain at the hands of disinformants, and having someone entering her home to do very weird things to cause her to become upset. There was a program initiated to send her over the edge, and especially after Barney's death. And that's when I moved in with her and saw this for myself. So I know that she was not paranoid, that this is not something she was imagining it. I saw this with my own eyes, and other people did as well.
Yeah. As familiar as I am with the elements of abduction experiences, certainly more than most people that have not had these experiences, there is still a part of me, Kathy, and I hope in a way I never lose it, that like just then when I went quiet, but certainly several times a year in the work, I find myself saying, with the accompanying feelings, my God, this is really happening. This is really happening to people all over the world all the time. They are minding their own business, living their lives. They are driving or they are sleeping, and they are taken. The laws of gravity do not apply. They are floated through the roof of a car, a plate glass window, a ceiling, a wall, taken into a craft or taken to a location where they are examined, prodded, checked out, things done to them by non-human beings, and then returned from whence they came. And it is like humanity is simply sleepwalking their way through the fact that this is a reality for some people, because it doesn't affect them directly, because they've never really had cause to think about it. They're busy paying their bills and trying to raise their kids and, be good citizens, or because they can't even imagine a way to begin to handle it. Because if it's true, literally everything that they thought they knew about the world they live in and the things they believe are now open to question. And this continues to be a major conundrum. It's one thing for people to talk about disclosure, or here we are in a time that a few short years ago, I don't know if we would have anticipated, where politicians are talking openly about it, and distinguished scientists and television personalities, and on down the pantheon, which has always been the case, but without ridicule, with interest, with a certain amount of respect. And yet, I doubt that any plans for future reports, like the one that the Pentagon issued last June, include plans for discussing this or anything in the realm of what we'll term exotic, back engineering, alien hybrids, missing pregnancies, but simply the abduction experience. And I wondered if you had any thoughts on how we might get from here to there officially. Unofficially, people are studying it. People are telling other people. People are learning on the internet. They're watching documentaries. They're reading books. But hypothetically, if you were put in charge of a government program, for lack of a better term, on how to normalize this subject and introduce it in a way that was palatable to Mr. and Mrs. Average American and citizen of the world, have you ever given any thoughts on how we could even begin to do this or what it would take?
I have, because it is so much more a hot potato than the presence of UFOs with, maybe robots inside.
Yeah.
This hits us at a whole new level. And I do know that there are government scientists that are studying all of this now. And that's very important. But just as the presence of UFOs, now termed UAPs, has been slowly introduced to the public, it's going to take a while before they can introduce the presence of non-humans. And there are several reasons for that. There are many different types of entities visiting this planet. The entire history of taking people and people being returned, oftentimes with partial memories and partial amnesia, and the whole idea that humans were being used as lab rats is not something that's palatable to anyone. To anyone, that would be a crime. That would be, probably equal to Joseph Mengele and Adolf Hitler, if you really looked at that in terms of human laws. And yet, at the same time, and the story that has to get out is that these entities have expressed concern about humanity. They say they've been here for thousands of years, that they have assisted in our development, that we have reached a point in our development where we are in a crisis. They've always been concerned from the time they started talking to experiencers in 1954. They've been concerned about our use of nuclear weapons and the impact of nuclear weapons. Their other concern is with our environment. They fear an environmental collapse. One of the messages that they gave to me personally, and they did start to give me messages after I learned to overcome my fear of them and to project love in their direction, is that they were so concerned about me that when they took tissue samples, it was to test the level of toxicity in my body because I had been exposed to environmental toxins. I would have thought that it was a horrible thing that was happening. But then I found out why it happened. They told me that we humans are out of sync. Our technological progress is out of sync with our spiritual development. Mm. And that appears to be their greatest concern, at least the group that I had a relationship with. Admittedly, not a happy one for many, many years. Mm. But I realize now that it was for humanity's benefit. And so if I had to be a volunteer or an unwilling individual, I no longer regret that I had to go through that, because I know that it was for our benefit. Now, I also know that not all of them are as nice as the gray entities that interacted with Betty and Barney, and I believe that they're the same ones who took me and also took my mother.
You have opened such an important aspect of what we're talking about here. We human beings, we're fairly simple creatures in some way. I will even say simple-minded without trying to be insulting to the human race, but we're wired to think in terms of love and fear, lies and truth, good and bad. And so on the surface, one of the first questions for any new challenge or subject in the world that faces us is it good or bad? Or is it good for me or bad for me? Is it telling the truth, or is it trying to trick me? And deception weaves its way through so much in terms of human behavior. Yeah. Do you feel that even if it's to do something to deceive for an overall positive purpose, that they, and again, let's talk about the group that you feel you've been interfacing with, that they are strictly telling the truth, or that they say or imply messages to simply help produce the result that they're after? And sometimes, not being fully truthful can assist one to get to a truth if that's not too, wound up.
Peter, do not know if they were attempting to deceive me. What I remember experiencing from them is that although it was frightening, although some of the tests gave me a little pain, that they were not intentionally harming me. They were attempting to raise my vibrational frequency. Many times they would tell me that. Did they mean that they loved me when they projected love toward me, an intensity of love that I've never felt on this planet? I don't know. Did they love me? Years ago, I used to wonder if they loved the taste of my flesh when I didn't trust them, when I was so terrified. But I don't think that that's what it was, because I've since learned that they're vegetarians.
You feel like me, though, that we are dealing with different other intelligences. That,
yes.
Again, there are the ones in the realm that I guess I've spent the most time exploring on my own, or the years that I worked with Bud Hopkins, that are other intelligences that live in corporeal bodies, that that travel in, for lack of a better term, machines of advanced technology, as opposed to the more the kind of intelligences that we think of when we think of the work and the research of people like Dr. Jacques Vallée, or John Keel, for example, that within that group of ones who are coming and going from who the heck knows where, that there may well be a difference of motivations and relationships with humanity and feelings toward humanity, that some of them may not be that crazy about us for some very understandable reasons.
Yes, that's quite obvious, that there is at least one group, maybe more, who tends to conquer planets. This is the way they look at it. They own them, and they own everything on them, and they'll use whatever that planet has in any way they wish. And so, that is a concern. They're not all nice people, but most of them are, from what I've been told. And the benevolent entities keep the more malevolent ones at bay.
You, as you mentioned before, and I read a very capsulized version of your background. You are so credentialed in the world of psychology and social science, and being, here on Earth, a very grounded person in the real world. And when you began to work with Stanton Friedman, who was a very open-minded, pragmatic, scientific thinking person, I guess I'm curious to know first if you ever discussed with him kind of the final expression of the book that you've just finished, the final part of the arc as you're experiencing it, of a more spiritual realm rooted in the pragmatic scientific realities that he was so involved in and articulate. Do you think Stan felt that there was this other aspect that we were kind of evolving toward, or might, depending on how we adjusted our thinking, or that he would not be fully comfortable? I know it's hard to say for somebody who's not here, and I'm not asking you to speak for him or to go into a trance right now and make contact with him. But how do you think he would feel about this part of your journey?
He would be, I believe, concerned about my reputation. Absolutely. But, because I have a great reputation
Yes.
as a credible researcher and investigator, and have for many, many years. And I have gone out on a limb a little bit in this book, but it's scientifically based, even though it's really not acceptable. And it's information that I would have dismissed 10 years ago and thought that it was ludicrous. That was a lot of woo-woo. But I can tell you that I did tell Stan some of the more optimistic messages from the extraterrestrials, and he was extraordinarily pleased to hear that. He knew that I specialized in this field. He came to me quite often when he wanted to know what was going on in the field or for an opinion. And so he respected me. He knew that I was an experiencer. In the very beginning, when I told him, he said, "Oh, I'll put that in my gray basket." But, by the end of his life, he told me that he had enough confirmation to believe that it was real.
One of the things that I find so fascinating, looking at it from the arc that I've experienced it on, becoming involved in a millisecond back in the later 1970s, when my sister first told me about parts of her abduction-related memories, very conscious memories, and having nothing to associate them with at all in my conscious reality, and assuming a adversarial relationship, us and them. What was my background in extraterrestrial studies? Oh, every goofy, low-budget science fiction movie I ever saw. And armed with that scientific information, I didn't trust them. And working with Bud for many years, and I think Bud was certainly a pragmatist, and people who were coming to him highly distressed, upset, in many states of negative thinking for all the right reasons. All of this at a period of time reflected against the Cold War, and more to the point that we, as a collective research community, knew so little about what we were dealing with. The case that had been explored the most up until then was your aunt and uncle's case.
Mhm.
And certainly there was understandable and well-expressed fear there. One only need to listen to some of the recordings with your aunt and uncle, especially your uncle and Dr. Simon, under regressive hypnosis, to remember what fear is all about.
Yes.
And it occurred to me some years into my work with Bud and coming into the 90s that because every new abductee overall had very little grounding, it wasn't like there was a lot of literature on it, or that there were abductee support groups, or that it was deeply ingrained in popular culture as much as it is now. In the absence of knowledge, there is fear and concerns about the unknown.
Mhm.
Now I find it fascinating that so much of the most credible research suggests that the stats have tipped from, say, where they were informally 30 years ago, when, let's say, 2/3 of what I would consider credible documented reports of contact were defined by anxiety. And now it's more the other way, that a third of reports are anxiety driven, and that well over half of credible reports are very positive, or certainly positive in the experiencer's mind and what they share with us. Is that fair to say?
I think that it is, Peter. And let me say first that although Betty and Barney had a great deal of fear initially, fear colors one's perception of what has occurred, and you take a negative view. But by the time Barney had completed his hypnosis with Dr. Simon said to him, do you feel that you have been kidnapped? And Barney said, no, because when I think of someone being kidnapped, I feel that they have been harmed, and I have not been harmed. So that's not something that has ever been focused on before, but it shows that Barney came to the conclusion that it wasn't as bad as he thought. He was extraordinarily fearful initially, but he survived it. He came away unscathed, except for emotionally from this level of fear and this conscious recall of observing these non-humans and the physical evidence that they discovered when they arrived home, and the 2 hours of missing time. So I think we have to understand that fear colors this, but I think that the ETs in general have been working to convince humans that they're really not here to harm us. And, initially, what people remembered was the fear. And the hypnotists in the beginning would oftentimes get the person to the point where they were extraordinarily fearful. They just wanted to escape. And they'd end the hypnosis session. So what is the person left with? That incredible degree of fear, playing over and over in their mind. So I think that hypnotists, hypnotherapists have learned what they should do and what they should not do, that they need to give suggestions, an escape route, a way to stand back and just look at it and not feel it, a way to be reassured that they are okay, that this happened a long time ago and it won't harm them. So that I think that has a lot to do with it. Also, that so many people are reaching out to others today in an attempt to help them. People have changed in this way, that they reach out to others in service, in compassion, and that's extraordinarily important.
It is. I guess one can say that every fear at its root is a fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to get sick? Am I going to fall in love? Is the Ukraine going to be swallowed up by the Russians? Is things going to work out in this country in terms of getting a total handle on COVID? And I guess if one is looking for an emblem of fear of the unknown, human beings facing off with non-human entities who did not ask conscious permission to enter your life and who all of a sudden are there in your face, in your bedroom, wherever, without any background information or knowledge the kind you're talking about, this can be as scary as it gets. And we've just had a bit of a missing time experience in that we have blown through our first hour. This is Peter Robbins with my special guest, Kathleen Marden. We'll be back in a few short minutes with our guest for a continuing discussion on this most compelling subject. Stay with us.
Hey members, the new KGRA-DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA-DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA-DB.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button, so just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Discover the Observation Deck, a one-of-a-kind virtual event platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus. There's so many areas and activities to choose from. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, an expo hall, a nightclub, and even a beach. So come attend a conference, take a class, or hear a lecture on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Go to theobservationdk.com.
And welcome back to Meanwhile Here on Earth with me, your host, Peter Robbins, and my guest, dear friend and close colleague, Kathleen Marden. Without further ado, let me introduce two additions to the second half of the show. Dr. Melanie Barton-Bragg has a master's degree in social work and a doctorate in pastoral counseling and community development. She has maintained a private holistic psychotherapy practice since 1985. She is an ordained Disciplines of Christ Christian Church minister with ecclesiastical endorsement as a pastoral counselor. She is a Reiki and Rife practitioner. She has taught at the college level, led multiple workshops, consulted with organizations and churches to navigate through transitions, including educating them about sexual addiction. As a trained crisis responder, she is called in for debriefing critical incidences in private and governmental agencies. She works with experiencers and helps remove negativity from people's ad dwellings. Archived episodes of her 2.5-year internet radio show are available for listening on her website, which I'm going to spell out: THEDREMELANIE show.com. She has been interviewed on television, radio, and online live events. She has written 4 books and is working on her 5th: The ABCs of Children's Sermons, Quicksand, Marion's Memories, Married to a Sex Addict Minister, Clergy, Sexual Misconduct, a layperson's guide to predict, prevent, detect, address, treat, and recover from clerical sexual abuse. Her books are available on Amazon.com. Her newest book, A Mother's Worst Fear, is about school violence and how restorative justice helps heal the community. To contact her to lead a workshop, seminar, webinar, or teleconference, or to become a virtual client, contact her at DRMELANIE Barton@gmail.com. And Dr. Melanie Barton Briggs, it's a pleasure to have you on the show with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Kevin J. Briggs is an author and specializes in consciousness and connection to ET UFOs. His recently published book is titled Spiritual Consciousness, a personal journey, and covers 57 years of his experiences of ET contact and UFO connections. Kevin speaks of his experiences of ET to many groups of UFO and ET enthusiasts. They're eager to hear of his interactions. He always receives a warm reception as well. Kevin has written articles which have been published in The Truth magazine. His published books also mentioned in Psychic News UK in their editor's Good Read section. He has also written an article about his ET experiences, which has been published in the New Observations magazine. Kevin has also appeared on local radio stations and recently filmed for a TV show called Unlocking Your Limitless Life, hosted by Susan Chancer and produced by Robin C. Adams. Kevin was also a keynote speaker in Miami at the FREE Consciousness and Contact Experiencer Conference, hosted by the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Experiences. He is a speaker at the Consciousness and Contact Conference held in July 2019 at the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. Kevin has also been a guest on Whitley Strieber's radio show Unknown Country, the Kevin Swain show from Australia, the Kevin Moore show in the UK. Kevin also appeared on Melissa Kennedy's TV show and the UFO Women filmed locally in Florida. Kevin is co-author with Melissa Kennedy and Edgar Young of the recently published Tap into Universal Energy, Understanding Consciousness, Energy, and Consciousness. His website is kevinjbriggs.com. And Kevin, welcome also to Meanwhile Here on Earth.
Hi, Peter. Thank you for inviting me. And hi, Kathy and Melanie. It's good to see you again, as always.
Nice to see you.
So, Kathleen, you had written on your own and with 2 wonderful co-authors a series of books taking you up to the book that we are really here to discuss as well, really more than any of your published works. Again, I want to just bring people's attention to the challenge, the reality, the welcoming of this title, well, the subtitle in particular, Forbidden Knowledge, A Personal Journey from Alien Abduction to Spiritual Transformation. I think it's fair to say that the word abduction has a negative connotation to it. One does not wire it up with happy associations or cheerful get-togethers. You are being taken, and the understanding is you have not given permission. These two extraordinarily well-credentialed individuals that we have just brought on the show with you are colleagues and friends of yours who also had a certain amount of impact, effect, and are part of Forbidden Knowledge, your new book. Why don't you take it from there and give us an idea of how you're connected, and then we'll move forward into some of the challenges of what the book contains.
I'll be happy to. It dates back to 2016 when I was speaking at the Mutual UFO Network's International Symposium in Orlando, Florida. I believe you were there too, Peter. And I was busy during that entire time, but Melanie Barton-Bragg, who I had already met and knew a little bit, was there, as well as Denise Stoner. And Melanie, why don't you tell us how you met Kevin?
Okay, be happy to. We were having a lunch break and all the seats were taken. So I had to sit near the courtyard and there was one vacant seat across from me. And while I was sitting there talking with another person who was an attendee, Kevin came up and said, "Would it be okay if I sit here?" And I said, "Certainly." So he sat down, we began to talk, and he said, "Can I share with you something about what I've been experiencing?" I said, "Of course." So he did. And after he shared with me, which I'll let him tell you more about, he said, "I've been told that I need to get this word out and I need some help to do this. Do you think you could help me with this?" And I said, "I think so. So let's see what we can do." And then from there, we developed into a working unit. So I'll let Kevin tell more.
Yeah. And Kevin, were you a person who went to UFO conferences on a regular basis or at all?
No, not at that time. No, I wasn't particularly interested in going to the UFO conferences. I'd had my lifelong contact with my own ETs and my UFO connections. I didn't really need it supporting, as it were. I only went because I was asked by one of my ET guides to go down to the Orlando conference. So I was reluctant. I didn't really want to go. I wasn't interested in the nuts and bolts of things, but I agreed to go. And I remember when I was driving down there, I said to Ort, one of my ET guides, "I don't really want to go down here, but if I'm going, I want to meet someone that can help me, assist me with my journey and sharing my message." So I continued my journey. And as Alan has just described, lunchtime came and I went and bought a sandwich. The courtyard and cafeteria area was full. I just saw one seat and I went and sat down, asked if I could sit down, and Melanie said yes. She continued chatting with the friend she was with and then brought me into the conversation, and that's how we met.
Peter, we can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Peter, we can't hear you.
Right. Here I am with my voice. I'm going to ask you to hold for a moment while I bring on our third panelist, dear friend and close colleague, Denise Stoner, who is a proud member of MUFON's Experiencer Research Team, working under Director of Abduction Research, Kathleen Marden, and Assistant Director, Dr. George Medrick. Denise is a Florida MUFON field investigator, SSD, which is State Section Director, and Assistant State Director for Florida MUFON. She co-authored and published her first book, The Alien Abduction Files, released in May of 2013, with Kathleen. Denise has an educational background in business and psychology and is a certified hypnotist specializing in regressive hypnosis using forensic methods. She holds educational forums for both public and private gatherings for abduction experiencers. Her involvement in the UFO field spans more than 40 years. She also has a special interest in past life research. Denise is retired after 8 years working with National Park Service in Denver, Colorado, on a special team designing the first national park for Saudi Arabia. This was followed by 12 years doing background investigations on new recruits entering the U.S. Navy in Florida. She has appeared on the Travel Channel, PBS, and more, plus numerous radio shows. She can be contacted through email at her address, which is dmstoner1@gmail.com. And Denise Stoner, I love you. It is a pleasure to have you back on this show, my friend.
Love you too, Peter. Glad to be here.
And being that you have just joined us, how are you involved in this newest Kathleen Marden venture?
Well, she's done such an amazing, genius job of writing this book. So she has described some of the research that we've done with Kevin and Melanie, which we have enjoyed immensely. It's just a fantastic group to be with. So that's the main, I would say, topic that I was involved in, was that research.
Kathleen, let's go back to your inception for this book. You're coming from a career of scientifically grounded research, investigation, studies, and writing on truly anomalous UFOs and occupants, if you will, of the ones, as we've categorized in the first hour, that are in the realm of machinery as opposed to the more ethereal. Was this something that you had been thinking about doing, or some epiphany happened and you decided, I need to write this book? And how did these three remarkably unique individuals that are on with us enter into the process?
No, Peter, this was really an epiphany. I had not intended for the book to go in the direction that it did, but about a dozen years ago, I was given a packet of information by the granddaughter of Admiral Herbert B. Knowles. And it contained information about his communication with a woman who communicated with extraterrestrials. And what was so impressive about this is that it wasn't just him. The information that this woman was receiving was very highly scientific. It contained scientific information far above and beyond her level of knowledge or understanding. And so he wrote a letter to Margaret Chase Smith, who was the U.S. Senator from Maine, and gave that to her. And it, in turn, went to Dwight Eisenhower. And from Dwight Eisenhower, this was investigated through the Navy, through the Air Force, the CIA, the FBI. I have the documents. And Wilbert Smith, who was the Canadian government's UFO scientist, was involved in this study as well. Prior to that, I thought this was nonsense. And I thought that when I entered into this experiment with Kevin, I was going to do it secretly, that Melanie, Denise, myself, and others would do it secretly. We would never tell anyone what had occurred. And so I went on for probably 4 or 5 years, not thinking that I would ever speak of it publicly. But we acquired a level of evidence because we're investigators too. Denise brought her equipment. We were able to measure the temperature changes in that part of the room where these non-humans were standing. We had more than a 5-degree increase for the 5th and 6th dimensionals.
Whoa.
And an about an 8.5-degree increase for the 9th dimensional. That's extraordinary. And not only that, but we felt a very strong electrical tingling sensation in our bodies in their presence as they described, answered our questions, described their environment to us, told us all about the history of this world and their part in it. It ended up being extraordinary. And finally, I thought, well, this really needs to get out to the public. It's that important.
Wow.
And then Kevin, I had recorded all of these sessions and transcribed them. I think Kevin's wife transcribed a couple when I was just overwhelmed with work. But then Kevin, I talked to him about the book I was writing, and he said, well, why don't you print the transcripts? And, I knew it was his personal material in a sense, that he was the individual, the medium, you might say, who was communicating. But I was very pleased that he gave me this opportunity. And it started out as an experiment that I was highly skeptical about. But over time, I learned to get into my right brain. I learned to communicate with these entities as well, and to observe changes in my physical environment that they said they would allow me to see. So, and this happened, you can ask Denise and Melanie, it happened to them as well.
Wow.
It is not based on faith.
Melanie, would you jump in here and give your impressions on how this was coming together for you as the project developed?
I too, scientific evidence-based. And the second, it kept my fat fried. I mean, literally fried. I took a repair shop and they said, what did you do to your phone? We've never seen anything like this. I said, oh, I wasn't about to come. So I was able to get phone restored. But it was little by little time. We would ask what to expect, needed to, and we said going to happen would happen. So there's my credibility, and then one in particularly visible showed up in was Shiva, the right side, which is the overseer, and she like a tall person differently, but she looks to me like an angel that's about 6 or 7 feet tall, and she has bird feather wings, and she is very, very calming. And I was very ill at the time, and she put herself over me in like a and I felt they to go into what's that we.
You're breaking up a little bit. What we get the gist of what you're saying. Denise, your friendship, your professional work relationship with Kathleen predates this project by, certainly more than a decade. And the book that you two wrote together for me is one of the gold standards of abduction-related books, and it's particularly pragmatic. There's nothing woo-woo or ethereal or, lighter than air about it. You are both in the trenches looking at the realities of these experiences. This book is different. How did you feel when Kathleen laid out what she was looking to do and what your part might be in it. And was this a direction that your thinking was going in independently, or it was something of an epiphany for you too, as the project developed?
Well, I felt like that's where I was going, but until I actually experienced sitting in the room with Kevin and the others, then that just sealed it for me, that what I thought had been going on was actual reality. And, sitting with Melanie and seeing Kevin begin to channel and not realizing he was doing that. And then Kathy didn't know at all what he was doing. She just had never seen anything like that before. So when I asked her, and Melanie asked her, "Do you know what's going on?" She said, "No, what's going on?" Nor did Kevin know. And I don't know if they've already mentioned it, but he would be just drenched in sweat when he was through. Just the idea and feeling and sense of what he was exchanging places with really got to him physically at first. And we had to go ahead and ask him, would you want to try this again and do it on purpose? And hence began our project. So I see so many signs and signals that this thing is real. I had a near-death experience that was very similar to what you do, where you go, wherever that is. It's a comparison that hits my senses in such a way that I just feel that it is something we're supposed to be doing. There's signs and signals, and again, I had my laptop go on me tonight, and Melanie's having trouble, and you're supposed to be where you're supposed to be, so you fight to get there. You can't always see what's behind all of this, but I sense it now. I know it. Yeah.
Before we went on the air, I was speaking to Kathy, and what I was saying revolved around a question that I've been turning over in my mind one way or another for decades, since I was young. Let me begin by saying, and as I discussed with her, in my 20s, before I had any conscious awareness of the sighting that my sister and I had as kids, I was interested in esoteric subjects, ancient civilizations, mysteries, and history. And I was lucky enough to come upon the work of, I'm blanking, Edgar Cayce.
Oh, yes.
Edgar Cayce.
Up until I read anything by Cayce, my attitude toward the word channeling and associated manifestations was, talk in a funny voice, roll your eyes back in your head, make believe you're a 50,000-year-old disembodied spirit, convince some poor schnook that you are what you say you are, receive their thanks for assisting them in whatever the hell they think you've done, take your money and get out of there because you're a crook. Edgar Cayce's work and how scrupulously it was recorded and logged in by his longtime secretary, his son Hugh Lynn Cayce, was a remarkable archive of the closest thing I've ever seen to proof that life goes on, that, there is an afterlife. And that immediately set me out to thinking about, there is what most people call the mystical realm, which is what we're touching on here, as opposed to the scientific realm. And I have a lot of problems with the mystical realm. I much prefer to see or imagine that subjects like reincarnation, which are, let's say, outsider subjects, don't fit into our normal nuts and bolts way of thinking about the world, that in fact they are governed by hard, fast scientific rules. as much as any Darwinian construct is, except that we have no idea in hell what the rule is covering it, or that it's been lost to time. A good example of that may be astrology, which I grew up once again thinking, it's that little column in the newspaper that's going to tell me as a Virgo what's going on with me that day. Yeah, right. Give me a break. As opposed to laws that may go back millennium and are governed in part by the moon's gravitational impact on women as their pregnancies develop, and those subtle influences come upon the fetus, which help define the person the fetus is going to be. And I began to think, are there rules that govern things like reincarnation that are as strictly scientific as the second law of thermodynamics, being that water boils at 112 degrees Fahrenheit? Or is there just this world of mystical stuff? And I wanted to know personal opinion. This is nothing.
Sure.
It's just your thoughts and opinion on it. And I'd like to start with Kathy on this. Are we talking about two different worlds here, do you think, or an integrated reality, part of which we just don't have the tools to enter in the way that we do in the scientific realm? Kathy, your thoughts on that?
I perceive this as being a scientific experiment. And much of the information that we received was as of a scientific nature. Their technology, for example, the understanding of consciousness and an understanding of the dimensions and what this means. And there was a great deal of information shared that I hadn't known about previously, but it made sense scientifically.
Kevin, as a lifelong experiencer who has a life caught up in the reality of these non-standard experiences, do you feel or think, and it may be just purely intuitive, that this world that you partially inhabit is governed by scientific protocols that are a mystery to us on a certain level, or that there is an entirely separate realm, a non-scientifically governed realm that has its own laws, so to say, but that is mystical, for lack of a better term?
Yes, my understanding is that everything is connected and everything is ruled by these scientific principles that we don't fully understand yet. And I know when I was given a download about the quantum unified field theory, just in a split second, I knew nothing about it. They just said that there's a weak force, a strong force, electromagnetic force, and the gravitational force. But there's a fifth interaction, which is consciousness itself. And if your scientists include consciousness within their calculations, it will solve some of their problems. And when I got that download, I said, look, you've just given me all this information in an instant. Can you show me a craft? And the craft appeared immediately. I was sat by my pool. I went in to get my wife, Sandy. I said, come on outside, Sandy, there's a craft here. We both went back outside. A second craft appeared, a third craft, a fourth, a fifth, 7 in total, flew slightly over our heads, changed direction by about 80 degrees, and then disappeared sequentially as they arrived. That to me was confirmation of the information that they'd given me in relation to our own scientists' understanding of the quantum unified field theory, without consciousness being included in that. Consciousness is energy health. Once we understand that, and the whole thread through my education through now, which is 60 years, 68 now, and my first contact was when I was 8, that whole thread of consciousness has gone through that education. And they haven't sat me down in the classroom and taught me these things. They gave me experiences. And from those experiences, I learned to understand consciousness and how it's connected to the dimensions, to the different life forms that we have at the different levels of frequency. And I can transcend those frequencies because I've been taught how to do it. So my world is a little bit larger than most because it incorporates, and it is my world, it's my reality. And I wouldn't have spoken out about it had I not been asked to do so. So in answer to your question, Peter, yes, it's in with our scientific boundaries, but we don't fully understand them yet because we're not including consciousness. And once our scientists do that and expand their own knowledge, then this will open up the whole field of who we really are, what reality is. And I have an understanding of reality that they've given me, which is holographic in nature. It's a projection of consciousness and thought that create that reality. And when you realize that we are the creators in relation to our own reality through thought and consciousness, it opens up a whole new aspect. Then we're able to co-create using thought and consciousness with our ET star families. They all know that. Our indigenous people know that. They've known that from time immemorial, but they've been quashed. This information is not to be taken lightly. It really shows who we are as a species. So I always say that exciting times ahead, Peter.
Yeah, and thank you for articulating that the way that you did. Melanie, would you agree in principle with what Kevin has laid out here, or does your thinking take this subject in a slightly different direction? Melanie, can you hear me? Okay, I'm going to ask.
I didn't know who it went out when you were asking.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. All right. So that's fine. My thinking about it has since beginning. In the beginning, I had very silly system, religious beliefs, and as I got more involved with the council, I began to understand that we one, and that what so what I did is I began my thinking to include the higher beings in different dimensions were able to help me they aren't different levels, and that as I connect with the beings of the council, I raise my vibration, which gets me closer to a spiritual whole and not the old God image that I was brought up with as a child and trained in religious studies. So
Sure.
I have a more cohesive model now of what faith is, consciousness is, and it has really evolved and expanded for me.
Denise, what's your thinking on this? Again, there may well be an entirely separate realm of experiences, realities that in no way are connected to or governed by what we'll call scientific thinking. Or, as we're partially postulating here, it's all connected and everything is governed by real laws, but we're just not aware of, or we only have partial understanding of laws that govern some of the outsider information that we're talking about.
Oh boy, how do I explain this? I do a lot of meditating, and I do believe it's all connected. During my meditation one night, I not only saw in my mind's eye or visualizing, I saw my ET that had taken me for years. He had aged, but he also showed me the same exact place I had been when I had my near-death experience.
Oh my.
And I recall during that, and the same thing was said by the ET. I said, where am I? I couldn't separate from the mix of all this energy that was around me. I didn't even know if anyone could see me. And I said, well, where am I? And he said, I'm going to show you. You can separate out. You're a part of this whole, but you can separate out. And I could see a light around like head, arms, torso, and legs. And I knew that was me. And I knew that I was still who I am, but I was also a part of this whole. And having experienced that and the near death, it's something I just know. There are many levels, many parts. We're all a part of this source, if you will.
Yeah. Kathleen, there was a time when the term ufology and ufologist carried a certain amount of respect with them. They've really been decimated the last couple of years by an awful lot of naysayers who are very active on the internet, which is not the greatest place in the world to educate oneself about complex subjects like this. It is decidedly a very double-edged sword. The internet, of course, contains a great deal of value and a great deal of complete and total crap. It can be extremely divisive or uniting. And I don't know, maybe it's part of the way the times are expressing themselves. Everybody on a certain level is frustrated, is tired, is feeling somewhat beat up by the pandemic we've been going through for 2 years now. 2 years of our lives, every damn day, we have to live with a certain amount of the reality of this, no matter how free we are in other parts of our life. Also, there's a general angst out there. Right now, the greatest expression of it is this attack by this huge country of Russia on the country of the Ukraine. There's a lot of people in each other's faces politically in this country, more divisive than not. I set that up with the understanding that the field of serious UFO studies is all over the place. It's not a governed field. It's not like if you commit a travesty or put something forward in the general dialogue that is decidedly untrue, you're going to lose your license to practice. We have no AMA. We have no bar association. The closest maybe we get is if one is a member of MUFON, which is the world's largest UFO research organization, but still only a few thousand members worldwide, if you train to become an investigator, which is a great training, as you know. And then you do something that violates the ethics of the work. MUFON can remove your credentials to be an investigator or kick you out of the organization, but you are still free to be practicing the study of UFOs. In that study, with all that said now, there are people who see themselves as strictly scientific in the way that they proceed. They're pragmatists, they're logical thinkers, much as we have identified ourselves at different points in our development. Other people who are much more spiritually or ethereally involved in their studies. It's not about hard metal objects. It's not about trace cases. It's about channeled messages. It's about certain aspects of esoteric studies. But what your new book is suggesting is that the twain shall meet. There is a point where one, with a certain amount of grace and logic, moves directly into the other. Do you think that there's going to be a certain amount of antagonism or resistance or challenges in the greater world of UFO studies among these two factions, the hardcore pragmatists and the more mystically oriented, ethereal thinking people regarding your new book and what it brings together here?
I cannot predict the behavior of the nuts and bolts UFO investigators. I was a nuts and bolts UFO investigator for many years. When Jacques Vallée wrote about the observation of craft with the suggestion that it had properties that were not entirely physical, that it could simply fade in and out of existence.
Right.
As a nuts and bolts investigator, I used to think, oh, it's just moving so quickly that people think that. It can't be. And I know there are many people, especially people who are new investigators in this field, who are going to be entirely invested in the nuts and bolts and believe that that is science and that is the end all of science. But it's simply not true. Because if you will read information from Dr. Rudy Shield, astrophysicist, recently retired from the Harvard-Smithsonian Astrophysics Laboratory, Claude Swanson, PhD, associated with Princeton, wonderful physicists, brilliant men who do study this area of science as theoretical physics. And that's where it merges, is in theoretical physics. There is a lot in the messages given to us by these non-human entities that involves theoretical physics. And so I think that this is where the twain shall meet. In terms of spirituality, I'm a social researcher. I've worked on 3 studies on experiencers with about 5,000, looking for commonalities that experiencers share. 2 of those studies were with PhD academics. And we discovered that nearly 100% of abductees increased their level of spirituality as a result of their contact events. That's pretty extraordinary and was unexpected to me. And that is also a characteristic of near-death experiencers as well. In the studies that Doctors Ring and Rosing did on near-death, the Omega studies on near-death experiencers and UFO abductees, they discovered that the characteristics are the same. The only difference is the abductee group had a higher level of trauma associated with it, which is understandable considering how frightening it is in the beginning until you understand what is actually occurring. And so I think that all of this combines. It's all related. And I think that the reason that I arrived at the point that I'm at now is because I went through the stages. I've been doing this research for so long a period of time that I had to open my mind and had to look further instead of staying just solidified and not learning, not moving. I'm an experimenter, and I think of myself as a scientist on the road to discovery. That's what I do. And this was something else to look at to see if it had any scientific merit. And I discovered that it does.
Denise, I'm going to ask you, you're reacting much like I think I am in my mind. Your thoughts as Kathleen is speaking.
Well, first of all, having been a friend and she my mentor and my investigator for all those years, to watch her blossom into this new force that she is in writing that book. Those are my thoughts. And in the very beginning, she even said to me, if I said anything that was just a little bit off as far as, past lives. And so I'm a scientist. Remember, I'm a scientist. And I don't hear that anymore.
Yeah.
I don't hear it at all. And it's just been amazing to see her willing to step into this arena and to bring all of us with her.
Yes, yes. Well said. And I know you speak, even though I didn't mention it in your introduction, as a lifelong experiencer abductee yourself.
Yes.
Kathleen, while you were talking, I thought of a question that I just want to go round. Any of you are welcome to expound on it or simply yes or no answer. We now live in an area wherein the credentialed, respected mental health community, and I include not just therapists and counselors here, but accredited psychologists and psychiatrists, where micro doses of psychedelics, mescaline, different kinds of mushrooms, certainly LSD, are used in treating certain conditions where in the 60s, when I was involved in this, there was, to put it mildly, no support in the establishment mental health community for, and I say the establishment mental health community. We had professor of psychiatry, Timothy Leary at Harvard, who basically bucked the system and said, this is going to change the world. Let's everybody turn on, tune in, drop out, and take acid. And he got his walking papers from Harvard and was an outsider basically for the rest of his professional life. Dr. Richard Alpert at Harvard, a psychology professor who felt that there was tremendous potential value in psychedelics for understanding and knowing ourselves better, also took that position much against the established order. I know for myself, in my very early 20s, the euphemism was we were experimenting with, which immediately makes me laugh seeing myself tripping my brains out on LSD, surrounded by laboratory equipment and lots of test tubes and things. We were just having an incredibly good time, and at the same time, getting to know ourselves in a way that I am eternally thankful that I did get to do that. Again, a great transposition over the course of about half a century here in terms of our perception of psychedelics and naturopathic ways of consciousness change. Do you feel that as time passes, people involved in the UFO research community as well as experiencers are going to go through a transformation or are already involved in said transformation of this all being much more unified than we used to see it, certainly myself? Don't tell me that I'm vibrating at a low frequency here. I'm doing my work and it's very pragmatic. I'm a cop in, a certain realm, or an attorney building a case on evidence I could take into a court of law. And please don't bother me with what your Martian is channeling to you, because I think that's nonsense. As opposed to, I now am completely aware and respect how little I really know. I mean, I know more than most people about this subject, as you guys do, but I know also how little I know and could prove in a court of law, which isn't a terrible place to be, really. There is a definition of a Zen beginner, of knowing you know nothing and having it be all right. We all know more than nothing about this. And at the same time, we're in a world rife with opinions and positions and good guys and bad guys. I think sometimes poor Louis Elizondo, if he's some great cosmic villain or, a guy who's caught in the middle of all of this with a military background, doing his best to put together the pieces from his point of view, he certainly is being worked over in the UFO media as either a really good person or a villain in all this. I think he's just a guy caught up in circumstances that are well beyond him, and taking on all kinds of labels from people depending on their point of view. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here, but any thoughts or reactions to anything that I've just babbled in the last few minutes?
Are you asking me?
I say yes.
Yep.
I say yes, that as people learn to connect to the greater consciousness, they won't have to use LSD or ayahuasca or any of those things that the collective, when you plug into it and connect with it, telepathic, we connect with one another. And what one other knows can share with someone else. And 1 + 1 is not 2. 1 + 1 can be 1,000. And you agree to open your mind to look at what could I learn rather than what could I teach. Let me be an open vessel. And I think that if people can learn to do that, it will really expand.
Bravo, and well said, Dr. Barton Bragg. Kevin, your thoughts?
I would agree with what Melanie said there, especially in relation to the LSD and the drugs. We're able to access these higher levels of consciousness. I'm fortunate to have been guided, as I say, all my life, but I certainly understand how people who are nuts and bolts UFO people will have difficulty with that transition and expanding that knowledge into consciousness. But it's where we have to go. We have to go that way as a evolution within our species. And if we don't, then we're facing extinction. So we need to raise our level of understanding. We need to raise our evolutionary understanding of who we are, the science that surrounds all this. And there are the rules that do regulate all these things that are happening within that conscious field. And there are many doctors now who are looking into this and already expanding their consciousness. I'm going to a conference in Palm Beach in May, and there'll be over 1,000 people there, all interested in consciousness itself. They're not going to see the consciousness of the ETs and the consciousness of the UFOs. They're going to have an understanding of consciousness itself. And once we understand that level in relation to even just like trees, plants, animals, they have a level of consciousness. And if you have an understanding of that, you can communicate at these levels. You mentioned lower levels. I don't like that term. I just like the terms of levels. You wouldn't complain. You wouldn't put a kindergarten child in with a conversation with a group of PhD students. The kindergarten child wouldn't be able to understand it. He would think it was woo-woo science. Okay, well, that's where we're at now as a species, and we need to expand that knowledge of consciousness for us to move on and evolve.
Kathy, where do you think this is taking us? Do you think the intelligences that you've been interfacing with want to bring us into a positive, brave new world? Are they on our side, I guess is what I'm saying?
Most of them, I believe, are on our side. I've had evidence of that. And as I said earlier in the program, they're very concerned about human development. They're here to guide and assist us. They have been from time to time for thousands of years, they say. And this is a critical time in our development where either we will move ahead, we will mature as a species, we will use our brains in a different way than we have before, and that includes our emotions. We'll become aware of consciousness and the impact of the collective conscious on everything on this earth. And if you understand that, then I think that you will be in a position to move forward, to survive as a planet and as a species and to save everything on this planet.
Kathy, thank you so much. I want to thank Kathleen, Dr. Melanie Barton-Bragg, Kevin J. Briggs, and my dear friend Denise Stoner for joining me tonight. Next week's guest will be James Clarkson, an investigator for over 45 years in criminal justice and the realm of UFO research, now having investigated more than 1,500 cases. Also the author of several remarkable books, my favorite being Tell My Story, June Crane. He will be joining us next week. In the second hour, we will also be joined by his amazing wife, Joanne, a poet, a nurse, and a remarkable psychic in her own right. If you've enjoyed this show, please tell your friends. See you next week. Please take care of yourselves. Stand up for what you believe in, and be kind to each other.